Don't quit on Christmas. You don't have to be done yet. For so many people, the Christmas holidays have lost their spiritual significance. It just doesn't mean what it used to, which is something that I understand deeply. Christmas for the last 10 to 15 years has simply been the busiest time of year for me. It's just been a lot of work. And because of that, I haven't really thought about experiencing the spiritual side of Christmas. And to be honest with you, usually I'm just trying to get through it. And when you feel that way, it becomes an easy pathway to just walk away from the spiritual side of Christmas altogether, or at least I think so. Maybe you've had that experience. Christmas used to have a spiritual connection, but now it's kind of been lost, or you've just left it behind. Perhaps for you, it's been lost amidst the busyness with the holiday parties, the office get-togethers, and giving and getting the gifts, and getting together with people, all the anticipation. Or perhaps you've left it behind because at some point the version of Christmas, and by extension Christianity, that you grew up with, it just didn't hold up in adult life. Perhaps the God you thought you knew didn't really come through for you, or the version of God that you were sold didn't live up to what you were told. It's interesting. I've actually talked to a ton of people across really almost every age bracket for whom this is true. They've decided to quit Christmas and by extension Christianity because it just seemed like it stopped working. It stopped being good news. For some of the folks I've talked to, Christianity became bad news because of the way that they found themselves treating other people as a result of the version of their faith. They found themselves judging and excluding and mistreating and perhaps even hating different groups of people. For others, they were promised an experience, a spiritual event that never really happened. People all around them talked about feeling or sensing or perceiving things that they just didn't feel or sense or perceive. For others, it was because someone who was supposed to be a mature Christian said or did something very anti-Christian that hurt them. Look, I don't know everyone's experience. I certainly don't know your experience or the experience of those you love, but this is what I do know. I know that if I sat down with you, or at least with those whom you love, who have quit on all of this, I bet I would completely understand why you did. I'm sure that if I had seen or heard or experienced what you saw or heard or experienced, I would completely understand why you're leaving. But here's what I want you to know. If at some point the version of Christmas and Christianity that you grew up with, if at some point it diverted away from being good news, then it was probably at that point that it deviated from the original message and meaning. The reason that I say that is because the original announcement of what Christianity would become, that original announcement was really good news, and it was really good for everyone. Did you notice that the angel's announcement of the birth of Jesus begins with an instruction to not be afraid? Actually, one of the most commonly given instructions in the entire New Testament, more than anything else, is do not be afraid. I think there's a version of the Christian faith that does the opposite, though. It feeds on fear. Thinks you should be afraid. Be afraid that you aren't good enough for God. Be afraid of what God thinks of you. Be afraid of how people will treat you. Be afraid of people finding out your faults. Be afraid of failing. Be afraid of weakness. Be afraid of your imperfections. Be afraid that you don't fit the mold. Be afraid ultimately of getting sent to hell. Be afraid. In fact, for many people, the beginning of faith wasn't the message of Jesus at all, but it was the fear of what would happen if you missed the message of Jesus, right? So I think it's so important that you know, but before you decide to quit on Christmas, that the original version of the Christian faith doesn't start with fear. Not fear of hell, not fear of what's going to happen to you if you don't get this right, but actually the original announcement that brought Christianity into the world was a message of cheer. Do not be afraid, for I will bring you good news of great cheer, of great joy. So let's move on to that second piece, cheer. The angel announced that the message would be good news of great joy. Why? Well, because it was the announcement of the long-awaited king. In a world where everything seemed to be dark, the coming king would be like a bright light, a wonderful counselor, which in Hebrew means a strategist beyond understanding, the kind of king who could turn on the lights in all the darkness and give people a strategy for how to live life as a human being. In a world in which we long for someone to be able to do something about all of the evil and the pain and the suffering, the coming king would be like a mighty God, mighty meaning hero, the kind of king who could withstand absolutely anything this existence had to throw at him, including death. I mean, you're tired of feeling fragile and finite, easily overcome by darkness? Follow Jesus. He said himself that anyone who builds their lives on him would be able to withstand all of the storms of this existence, including death. Coming King was also promised to be an everlasting father, not just a lazy poolside parent, but the kind of leader in life who would be willing to give up what belongs to him in order to make sure his people had what they needed. Our world is filled with terrible leaders who are constantly sacrificing people to benefit their own power, but Jesus would be the kind of king who would leverage his position to benefit his people. He's willing to give his life for them. Finally, he would be the Prince of Peace. Prince meaning superintendent, as in the one in charge of making it happen, the one charged with bringing about that peace. Jesus came to bring peace with God, which was incredibly good news, especially for those who were trapped in this religious system of do's and don'ts, never measuring up, always falling short of the standard, with a rigorous system of rituals to be followed in order to make up for their own regrets and their mistakes. Jesus showed up and handed out forgiveness. No more sacrifices to achieve it, no more temple tax to pay. He was the final sacrifice we needed. And that peace with God that Jesus offers can bring about peace within yourself. I mean, Jesus thought you were worth dying for. You are worthy of love simply because you're a child of God, and that can bring incredible peace within. And when you're at peace with God and yourself, the natural outflow can be peace with others. You can see others as God sees them. They're people that he thought were also worth dying for. I mean, if God doesn't hold any of my sin against me, why would I still hold the sins of others against them, whoever your them might be? Jesus offered all of that peace freely. A strategy for life, strength to overcome death, a leader worth looking to, and a peace offered freely. That's what the angel announced when they said, "I bring you good news of great joy." It's not fear, it's a faith of cheer. And third and finally, it's for all those who hear. This is the part that's so striking to me. The good news of the Christian faith, the original message, was good news for everyone, from wealthy wise men to poor shepherds living in the fields nearby. That the good news would be good news for everyone. And I think that's kind of a struggle for us to wrap our minds around in our world, because often we operate in a zero-sum game. When something is good news for me, it usually means that it's bad news for somebody else. I mean, my clothes are cheap, but that's because they were made by peasant laborers somewhere else in the world. I mean, many of our so-called blessings are actually coming as a burden for somebody else. But that's not the case here. The original Christian message is good news for everyone. I mean, a strategy for life and life to the full, a strength that can withstand death, a leader who sacrifices himself for the people instead of sacrificing the people for himself, and in the promise and offer of peace with God. That's good news for everyone. Unless, of course, you insist on maintaining your own perfection, unless you insist on hanging on to self-hatred, unless you insist on hanging on to unforgiveness and bitterness towards others, then okay, this isn't going to be good news for you, but why on earth would you want to do that to yourself? You see, the original message of Christianity was that in the person of Jesus, God showed humanity what he was truly like. And I don't say that because it's just what I think and what I've come up with. I say it because it's what Jesus said about himself. Once while they were at dinner, Philip, one of the disciples, asked Jesus, "Hey, can you just show us the Father? Just show us what God is like." And Jesus said, "If you've seen me, you've seen God. If you want to know what God is like, then look at me." Friends, I don't know what your experience with Christmas and by extension Christianity has been like, and if you've had a terrible experience, I want you to know that the point where your version deviated from being good news is exactly the point where it diverted from the original message. But if the no fear, good cheer for all who hear original good news of Jesus, if that's of any interest to you, then I want to encourage you to follow the example of the shepherds in the story. I mean, when they got the message, they went to go find out for themselves if it was true. They didn't just take it as information or a cool experience. They decided to go and see for themselves. That's what I would encourage you to do. You don't have to quit on Christmas this year. You don't have to quietly quit on Christianity either. Reopen the file that maybe you've closed. Look into the actual good news of Jesus. Read the primary source material, the eyewitness accounts of his life and what happened to those who followed him. Maybe come back to this channel, redeemeronline.church, to learn more about his life and love. And my hope is that if you do, you'll see Jesus, the one who showed us what the love of God is really like. Merry Christmas.